So you reversed engineered yourself into Goldman Sachs because you wanted to be a startup founder.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
We started going really into just like successful founders and how they did it. And that's when we first heard of Y Combinator.
Yeah.
And then I had a professor in first year who was telling us to apply to accelerators or incubators.
Nice.
They're basically these places that pay you to work on your idea and just incubate you and give you resources. And then we started looking into YC and we just started listing all the backgrounds of people. Because I said before, it was, you would think all the successful people are uni dropouts that went,
yeah, because that's all you hear, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's why we wanted to make this podcast, because it's not true that you can be Bill Gates, drop out of uni and then build this $1 billion thing. We want more real stories.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's why I'm so excited to hear what you did to build a startup, because I think it's a bit more of a relevant journey.
I appreciate that. Yeah, so we basically started looking at all these YC founders and we were, what differentiates them? Firstly, we thought that they all came from nothing and did all this. And then you see that they all went to these top unis and a lot of them do have their parents worked at XYZ companies and there's a lot more to it. And not only that, but they also worked at certain companies. So like we kept seeing like consulting firms or investment banks, big tech and all of these companies. So we were just maybe there's something in that we don't know, but it seems like that's actually the majority of successful business founders.
Rather than dropping out with nothing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we just basically started making a list of all the companies that these people worked at and we just kept seeing the same repetitive names. We wrote down 20 companies and then we were like, let's just apply for them because maybe we'll learn something that these people did.
So you made a blueprint by analysing everything they did and just, I'm going to live my life and do that.
Yeah, exactly. Because we were like, let's just try and reverse engineer it and see if it works.
That's crazy. So you reversed engineered yourself into Goldman Sachs because you wanted to be a startup founder.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And so then Goldman was the first one that gave me an offer. So I was like,
did you tell Goldman in the interview that, you're here, I'm doing this because I want to be a founder?
I told them in my internship, actually. I basically just told them, they were like, what are you doing afterwards? I was like, 6 months I'm working on this project. My cohort was like the year after or like the January after. Okay. So they were saying to me, come back straight after the internship.
Ooh,
and I was like,
but you were like,
whoa, I want to test this thing out first. And they were like, the offer's open for you to come back sooner rather than later. And I was just like, I want to give this thing a go. And then...
That's good for them. So they knew you were building something.
Yeah, they did. I also think it gives you the power if you don't show desperation for or like only wanting one thing. Because then it makes it look like, oh, you have options.
She has options. Yeah.
And then I feel that played into it a little bit as well, because then they were just like, actually, like, why don't you just start sooner? And I was like, no, because I've got something that, and they were like, no, but why don't you want to make more money sooner?
Because imagine a Goldman offer. Everyone's, yes, I'll do anything. Like, I'll start tomorrow if you want me to, you know?
Yeah. But I think we were really fixated on trying to make something happen. So, yeah.
That is actually really useful advice for life.
Yeah.
Just don't be desperate, have your options.
So we just started. That was like in the 6 months after the Goldman internship. So we were like, let's just figure out, we'll build an app. And then we just spent as much time as possible learning how to build an iOS app and try and get that to market. And so then we came across this company. It was called TBH. And it was a social app built for teenagers. And within 10 weeks, it got acquired by Facebook for over 100 million. It became super popular. It just went absolutely viral. I think it was in the US mainly.
Oh, right.
And so there was all this hype about it, and we were just like, we looked into it, and it was like basically like teenagers craving messages from their friends. You would go on the app and it would come up with a few of your friends and a question would be asked, and then you would basically say something about a friend, and then they would get a notification saying this friend said this thing about you, and they were just really curious what their friends would say about them. So because of that, it just went viral. Facebook acquired it within 10 weeks of it launching.
10 weeks for 100 million?
Yeah, it was crazy. And so then we were just like, hang on, there's something in this. But what? Let's try and do the same thing in the UK. So then...
I'm just trying to think what that was. And 10 weeks, who were they building?
They basically, at the time, Facebook was worried because their user base was getting older. And so because of that, we need to find a way to bring more young people onto that. I don't know if you remember the phase of, like, when I was in uni, people just stopped. Everyone was on Instagram, Snapchat.
Oh, people stopped using Facebook.
Yeah, people stopped using Facebook. And it was more like parents and grandparents that were using it.
Facebook was done.
Exactly. Yeah. And like when I started uni in 2015, it was like all the events were on Facebook. And by the end, of uni, it was like people weren't really doing that anymore. It was
even my sister doesn't have a Facebook account.
Yeah.
She's 18. They wouldn't even touch Facebook. Facebook, I think at the end 2019, gone by then. 2018, 2019 at the end of uni. Yeah.
Exactly. And because of that, I think they were desperately trying to find a way of let's try to bring on more young people. And so because this app basically went viral with young people in the US,
they wanted to acquire all their users. They were just like, we need
to get all the users. Exactly. And so that was their strategy. They ended up shutting down the company within a few months afterwards.
But it was just to prevent them. They did the same thing with Instagram, didn't they?
I think they did, but then obviously Instagram became successful, so that's
that's good. Yeah.
And so we were just like, the only thing is let's do the same. Let's try and build something like this in the UK. But we didn't know how to build like apps, like mobile apps. So we were like, that's not a problem. Let's just learn.
Yeah.
So we basically just started. That was like in the 6 months after the Goldman internship. So we were like, let's just figure out, we'll build an app. And then we just spent as much time as possible learning how to build like an iOS app and try and get that to market. We didn't have the same success, obviously, but we learned so many. Yeah, that's when we started learning to build apps and stuff. Yeah.
So you decided to shut it down. Then you went to Goldman Sachs.
Yeah.
And how was your experience there?
Goldman, so it started off with a trip to the US. So
nice.
They take you to their New York office, they fly out all the grads. It was like, the first time in the US, it was like, oh, like everything's so much bigger, everything's like faster, like all the people are like more aggressive. I interned in the kind of sales and trading, the markets, then went back into kind of investment banking. So that's more like private side. It was cool because when we went to the US, like even just seeing like the trading floor and like all the sales and everyone on the court, and it just felt Wolf of Wall Street. Yeah, it was cool. And then came back and I was just like, oh, is this just it? Just going to the office every day and like,
do you know when you grind so hard for something and then you sit back and you're like, is this it?
Yeah.
And then reality sets in,
Exactly. And then 6 months I think it was like 6 or 8 months in, COVID happened. So then that's when they were freaking out and they were like, guys, like work from home. So in March 2020, it was like full on everyone just go back. To go. And it was a bit of a shame because it was like when you were first time working in the work, like after, like you've left uni and you're going into work and then COVID happens, you're just like, you don't really know what happens. But thankfully for me, like I went back home with my family during COVID and like I had a good time. Like I enjoyed
working from home because you had a family.
Exactly, because I was with my family and all of this stuff. But it was just like weird because then all the deals like completely like there was just like a freeze for a month. People weren't sure what was going on.
Yeah, everyone was so hesitant. I remember that happened to me my first job. I was working in tech and it was so fun going into London, going to the office. And then March 2020 hit and I was like, actually, do I really like this? I like the vibe of going into London and that, but actually the job.
It makes you reevaluate. I think
makes
a lot
you
of people
reevaluate,
Yeah, exactly. And then the good thing is like I think sometimes working from home could be more, people expect more of you because you're not seeing the people and you're not seeing them work.
You think they expect more of you?
Sometimes I feel like it does feel like that. It's like at home, you'd be working and then if you're not online, if you're like a green, like,
your Slack thing's not on,
then it looks like maybe you're not doing work. And so people would ping you being like, are you online? Can you help me with this? And so sometimes like...
But it's like, actually, I'm doing something else. But I think if you'd been in the office, they would have seen you doing something else. Yeah.
But thankfully, the people I was working with were cool. And before Goldman was when we started figuring out how to build apps. Yeah. And after Goldman is when we actually built it. And so...
Built which one?
Opinions, which was the TVH competitor. And so basically, it was just getting towards like... Basically, the days just looked repetitive because it was just like going to work and like coming back and it just felt like, oh, we want to go back to building. This was always a means to an end. This
was always a goal, wasn't
exactly.
it? Yeah.
And the goal was always 18 months because that was another thing that we saw with a lot of YC companies. Like,
you guys really planned this.
Yeah. It was like 18 months because then it's not like you just joined and then left, but it was like you've got the experience and so you actually can understand how it works and all of this stuff.
What did investment banking teach you about building apps?
I think the work ethic is just really interesting and useful to learn from. So I think it's more about the skills that you have working with people and how people are so like, it kind of skews your reality to think everyone is working this hard all the time.
Which is not true, is it?
Which is not true, exactly. But like, it's like, it felt a week there was like 3 weeks on the outside world or whatever.
Yeah. So what sort of hours were people working or what were they doing that you realised actually people don't work this hard?
So there were a few things that happened when, for example, the hours that people were working, it ranged depending on which desk that you sat on. But sometimes when there were deals, sometimes people would be working on multiple deals. You'd go in the morning, let's say 7, 8, 9, 10, I guess it depends on. And then you'd stay late, some people till... So after 7 is when you'd get a meal on the company. I don't know if that's changed now. But, and then after 10 is when you get like a taxi on the company to take you home. And there were also like beds and stuff in the office, which
is... Do you know, that is crazy. What do you think about that? I've never seen anyone, because I'm thinking, what is so important that you would need to be sleeping at an office? I know that sounds, but maybe just I've never seen that work ethic before.
Maybe also because people sometimes commute from a bit like further. So like, because I remember seeing like the little beds and stuff, and I was just like, and like one time I went in and there was like makeup all over like the pillows, and I was just like, this is weird because did someone just wake up because the sheets have not been washed? But I don't know. I guess it is intense. A lot of people judge it on FaceTime as well. Like they just want people to see them in the office because if you're looked at as the person who's always there, then you're working hard, and it does set an impression.
I saw this video recently, like everything in life is about how you're perceived. Like you could be very intelligent, very what, but if you're not perceived that way, it really doesn't matter what you're doing.
I think that's true. Like I think there's a lot in how people see you. which then makes it seem like maybe that's something you should also optimize for. And it's easy to forget that, right?
It feels like something you shouldn't say, that you need to do this just because. But you're saying that you should optimize about how you look.
It's just like you said, it feels like something that you shouldn't say. And sometimes it's easy to forget. And I feel like it's not even something that I do all the time, but it's like when I remember watching this YouTube video ages ago, and this woman was saying, it's really important for you to just look your best, smell your best, everything your best at all times. And it's something my mum would mum would say when we were younger. She would be really annoyed when we'd wear odd socks. She'd be like, you shouldn't wear odd socks, you have to wear matching socks. Or you shouldn't wear socks with a hole in them because that just
doesn't look
good. And as a kid, you're just like, I just need socks. What if they're like slightly different? That much? And then I realized that no, it is important because people notice small things. I don't think it's like fair for you to just like fully be judged on how you look or how you present yourself. Places, like I was saying earlier, how we went to SF, and like over there, I can't lie, there were some people that they looked homeless, but we'd hear that they were worth multi-millions. It kind of depends on where you live as well. So I don't know. I think it's not fair, but maybe if it can help you, then maybe just try and lean into it a little bit.
Yeah. Then tell us about leaving investment banking, and then what did you go on to do next?
Yeah, left Goldman, left on really good terms actually with my MD and the team.
Oh, that's good to know. Yeah.
Yeah. I told them I wanted to leave to build something. And at first they were a bit confused by it because they were like, we don't really get why. Or like, you're so early in your career, like why is it like a push or is it a pull from something? Like that was the question actually one of my managers asked. And I was like, I think it might be a bit of both, like a pull towards wanting to build something. It's not a push from, it just was always part of the plan and I just want to go and explore this thing.
It's good that it was always part of the plan, because I think people, when they get stable, prestigious jobs, they can forget the plan.
Yeah, no, it's true.
And leaving a very nice job, what would make you do that?
In fairness, they did say I could come back whenever.
Okay, that's fair. So you had
but that was never like, that was only after I had 100% decided to leave. So I was like, that's not gonna sway my decision, because I already made the decision, because it's better to make the decision before. I felt like it was better to make the decision before talking about it. And so then basically left and just started going back to playing around with building apps and stuff. And I was approached by someone from the EF team.
Nice.
And they were like, yeah, we could see your experience, all of this stuff. Have you ever thought about joining EF? And I was just, I don't really know. Like, I heard about it, and I remember speaking to Ahmed about it, and he was like, I think it's like probably a good opportunity. There's nothing really to lose.
Had Ahmed, your brother, quit his job by then?
So at the time, he finished his master's at Imperial, I think when I was just before I went to join, or when I joined Goldman. That's when and then he worked in like banking a little bit as well. So he worked at Barclays, and then he also he was doing consulting, and then he went to work for Microsoft. Microsoft was the one that was on the list of we didn't align in terms of the
leaving.
The leaving. And he was like, yeah, I've heard good things. I think at the time actually he just started in VC, and he was like, yeah, I've heard good things about you. I think it's worth considering it. And at first I wasn't sure, because I was like, I want to finish working on Pinions like this, see if we can just get it to XYZ and just try and get more downloads and all of this stuff. But the problem is we built with Pinions, we built it wrong. Like Pinions was the TBH like app, because we built it solution first. We weren't really thinking of like problem first. We were like,
people want this. Yeah.
Exactly. We just thought, let's build it and people will come after we build it. And that was a big mistake that we did. Yeah. It was a lot of learnings. But then I spoke to the EF team, and I was just like, yeah, I'm working on something right now, so I don't know about leaving and working on something completely new and all of this stuff.
Because EF, you have to find someone there and then start a new idea, right?
Exactly. But then they gave me the offer, and then they were like, we think you should speak to Rob. So Rob Bishop is the guy who built Magic Pony, sold it for 140 million after like 18 months. It was like one of their biggest success stories.
Really?
And he was a mentor at the program. He was basically, they were like, if you're not sure about if you should come up with an idea, maybe speak to Rob. Like, he's a really good person to talk to about this, and who knows. So I spoke to Rob, and he was like, think about it. If you're coming into the program with an idea, and you've already been working on this idea, let's say even if it's for a few weeks or a few months, so it might be difficult for someone to be completely convinced by the vision, because a lot of the time people want to be there from day one together.
It's very true. Bringing someone on board when you already have things going on it does work. I've seen it work, but
it does work. But I think if it's not so solid, or if it just might be a bit more of a challenge. Maybe they don't feel like they equally own it as much.
Yeah.
And so then I was just like, yeah, maybe I'll just be super open-minded and just work on something, just go in with a bunch of different ideas or like segment areas and figure something out in the program.
Do you think they had changed your mind though?
About what?
Going in something new, do you think opinions could have been something, or do you think it just was wrong anyway?
No, I think it was like always in the back of my head, like maybe we could but at the same time it was more like, in hindsight, it was more a project to build, to figure out how to just build apps, get them on the App Store.
So they had convinced you to go to EF, and explain your experiences at Entrepreneur first.
Yeah, so went in and didn't really know what to expect. There were some really cool people there. I think it was like it's one of those things where it's like, I don't necessarily I've worked, for example, with my brother in the past, and I've worked with a few others that I've known more organically. Working with a complete stranger that you meet on a program is like quite difficult, especially when the majority of people there were guys. The majority of people there were like,
there's like only like mainly guys, which is crazy. But anyway.
But it's like, it was just like, okay, maybe I will try and just like work with people and see what it's like, and just
try it out.
Yeah, and like a lot of the people were really cool. Like their backgrounds were really cool. I'm actually in touch with a bunch of them still. But it was just like a bit of a different experience. I think I did end up working with someone. We got the EF funding. But I really liked the idea of having a lot of people who are hungry for the same thing.
All in a room.
Exactly, just like brainstorming and together. And I think we got lucky because our cohort was good as well. Like sometimes it could be hit or miss because it's just like they bring in a bunch of people in the room. So we raised the funds, and we were at the time building Myoda, so it was like we were helping outsource parts of your tech stack to future hires. So if you're a tech company, instead of doing a coding challenge for someone who's coming to be interviewed, you would just give them real work. If you like their work, you pay them for the work, and you're like, hang on, let's build this relationship. It's something that's done within the startup world anyway. Like people work with people on a consulting basis, but it was just formalizing that and making it more of a kind of a company.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And it was really cool because one of the first people who like got an interview was like, he was based in Ghana, and like the company was based in the UK. Yeah.
Really?
And so it was like an opportunity that he would have never had, but he got paid like
and he could
UK salary for building a product. And it was just like amazing for him because he was just like, this is amazing. Can I do more? Exactly. And so then he got the interview, and we just worked with a few other companies, and it was going well. And then we went out to fundraise in October, November 2022, and it was actually going really well. Like we wanted to raise like 1.2, and we had like half of that in like soft commitments, and then we had like final stage convos with a bunch of people, being invited to dinner or like their final offices, and usually that's like the sign of
but they're about to close it.
Yeah. And then you just started hearing all the Facebook fires 10k people, Google fires 10k people, Microsoft fires 10, like just the tech like crash pretty much. And we were just like, what is going on? And so a lot of people started getting a bit scared, and that's around the time that my co-founder and I stopped working together. Nothing bad to say about,
like, how does that feel? Because you're working on it, and then
the thing is, I think just like maybe startups isn't necessarily for everyone. Like not everybody can understand like the ups and downs of it or whatever it is. And so I expected it. I've been through things that are like worse than that. So it's just like you just have to keep going and figure out.
What were some of the things that you could have seen in the beginning that it wasn't going to work?
I think it just goes back to sometimes you can know a person, sometimes you like if you've only ever been in one scenario with a person, it's like you don't know
how they react to it. Yeah.
And this is nothing bad about the people that I've worked with in the past. It's just that's just the reality of the situation. Like right now, one of my co-founders, Adam. So there's me, Ahmed, and Adam.
How did you meet Adam?
So we met at an alumni event for EF, actually. So He had been through the program. Ahmed was going to go through the program. I guess I'll tell the story. So what happened? So then November 22, we're just like, okay, my co-founder's not going to continue working on it. So then we were just like, yeah, there's still money in the bank. I still believe in the idea. Like, why not continue just working on it? And then, but obviously it was going to be a bit more challenging. So then EF was helpful because they showed me a few people who were interested in the same space. They were like, maybe you should speak to these people. And I was just like, yeah, that's true. But it went back to that first conversation that I had with Rob, which is it's difficult to have already worked on something for a long time and then bring somebody on board, especially now that it's been like a few months of working on it. We've already had the funding, and it's like not the same as someone being from the get-go, especially because it's still technically so early stage. And so then I were brainstorming. We were just like, okay, we need to reevaluate like at this point, we were just like, maybe it's time. I'm just like, yeah, maybe it's time for me to leave as well, and we can try and
start something out. Yeah.
So then that's when he handed in his notice towards the beginning of 23, and then he actually got the offer to go and join EF as well. And then they told me you could come back and try and find another co-founder and just start from
Go back on another cohort with your brother.
And I was just like, it sounds good, but I've got a lot of the skills and I understand what the program's anyway. So the main benefit would be like meeting somebody.
Which you've already know your brother.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But we were just like, you know what, let's split the eggs. So he'll go and build something, I go build something, and then whichever one's more successful,
you'll just join each other.
Yeah. So then let's split the eggs, all of that. And then there was like an EF event in Jan in 23 after like the whole Demoda stuff was happening. And I was just like, and they kept telling me like one of the team, they were just like, oh, you should really come. There's going to be a bunch of people here. It would be really good for you to meet them. And all of them are EF alumni. So you can meet them. And I was not really in the mood to go, but I was just like, you know what? There's nothing really to lose. Went to that and then met Adam, who was our other co-founder.
So it was a good thing.
So it was really good that we ended up meeting because we've now known each other for over 2 years. And it's like,
so would you say EF's been quite instrumental in your journey?
It just goes back to that thing. It's just like you need places where people are like-minded, have similar ambitions, and like you have a place to go. And I think EF's done a really good job at that. And I know that sometimes they get criticisms for like certain things. Now they've moved to the US, and some people are like, oh no, you're supposed to be here in Europe. But I do think that they did do a good job of getting like ambitious founders and like people who want to be founders or people who are interested in building, but like just having that kind of community. I think they did a good job at that.
And what qualities do you have as an entrepreneur that allows you to be resilient and figure things out?
I think it's just maybe not taking no for an answer, but like within reason. Because people don't necessarily know what they want, and people don't necessarily know what they don't want. So like someone might say to you, I don't want to test this out, I don't think it's for me. But if you show them something or you tell them why it could be for them, then they'll change their mind. Like people can change their minds, and I think it's like,
true.
Yeah,
because you don't know the full picture. Yeah, you don't know what you don't know. Yeah,
exactly. And it's so easy. Like even sometimes people message me being like, "Hey, like we've got this new like solution. Can you test it out or whatever?" And I'm just like, "Yeah, it's not really going to be a good fit." But then if they say, "Hey, like I saw this thing and it's like perfect for your company, and here's an example of how," then maybe I'll be like, "Oh, hang on, that
actually,
yeah,
that could be helpful."
Exactly. So sometimes it's in the way that you pitch it, or sometimes it's in the thing that you show or whatever. But like people, like it's human nature to change their minds.
People change their mind all the time.
Exactly,
yeah.
Exactly. And I actually used to think it was like a bad thing if you're constantly changing your mind. And then I remember someone told me, she was an executive coach that's worked with a lot of really top tier founders and execs, and she was like, it's actually the sign of an intelligent person to change your mind if new data is presented to you. So not for you to just sit there and be like, oh, I don't know what to do, I don't know what to do, I don't know what to do. It's better to just make a decision and then stick by that decision until someone else tells you something new. And when you have that new piece of information, then you could be like, oh, now I've got this new piece of information, I no longer want to do this. And it's not indecisive to do that. It's just like,
because you've got new information now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so
actually, it's not. I don't think it's great to be rigid. You're presented with new information, and then you're still going to be like aligning no.
100%.
Yeah.
But that's just the same with, and I think it's just like a lot of people maybe find it a little bit awkward to keep
changing their mind.
Yeah, or keep pushing things sometimes, or trying to change some people's mind. But I think a lot of successful entrepreneurs do appreciate, or they can see when someone is like very resilient or has a lot of grit, or just keeps going.
I guess there's a way to do it. You can be like quite tactful in it, but I don't think like being asked again to do something if they believe they're benefiting you too is a bad thing. Yeah, I think a lot of entrepreneurs are quite, you could say, pushy. But it's not the worst thing.
And sometimes it's annoying. Yeah, sometimes you don't naturally want to be like, like you do want to come with something new, or you do want to come with some, and so it's like you need to know how to balance it. And I think it's just something that's constantly like
evolving. Yeah, I've had moments where I felt that I could turn it into a yes, so I tried to, and I think it's fine to try without being too.
Yeah, and read the room maybe.
Read the room. And if you think it's helping them, then I think it's fine.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. What are the big opportunities for Caspa AI? Like, where do you see it going?
Our ultimate vision is we see the world as moving towards the direction of hyper-personalization.
Yeah.
And so it's people like to see things that are similar to them or that they could relate to.
Yeah.
And so similar to when you go onto Netflix and Netflix alters their thumbnails based on who's watching. Because they know that you like this thing. Maybe if they have this thumbnail, then you're most likely going to watch this thing. So there's even with like, YouTube videos, people are just A/B testing different like thumbnails, and whichever one resonate is the one that people usually stick by. So that's happening with like a lot of different industries, but it isn't happening with online commerce right now. You go online and shops don't have, either they don't have a lot of images or they don't have models that are representative of their demographic. As an example, we have one of our early users was based in Vietnam, and they have a shop that sells in the US. And if you're in Vietnam, it's really difficult to get models that are representative of the US market, because you kind of have to get models. And it's really difficult. And so because of that, it's they either are forced to have images with no models
or like just Vietnamese models.
And that's good to an extent, but you can't
it doesn't resonate well with an American audience. Yeah.
And so because of that, they like using AI to help them create those images is just like significantly faster, significantly cheaper, and just it's just something that they could do within a few minutes if they wanted to. And so that's what we want to try and help people get to. If they can help, if we can help these brands create product images that are representative of their different demographics that they sell to, then it can increase the sales for a brand owner by up to 40%. But not only that, the consumers can actually feel like they're relating to certain things, and that will just make it easier for their whole shopping experience.
For sure. There's a couple questions I have about this. There was this podcast, I think it might be called Techish, that she was really annoyed because there was meant to be more black models that they were meant to be paying and things like that. But some of these brands are just using AI, something like Caspa AI, to just put a black model in something instead of actually the payment going to an actual black model. It was still going back to the company. However, there was more representation. So how do you feel with, not necessarily a critique, but how do you feel about this sentiment?
It's interesting because it's like we have to separate the tech, like evolution of tech and the way that it's being used, and like certain things that are, maybe separate's not the word, but it's like, it's important to acknowledge that's the case. You could be a photographer who's like hiring different models and paying, and let's say you bring in like 100 models and you're like, we don't have enough black models, so we're going to pay all these white models and then use AI for the black models. I don't think that's fair, and I don't think that should be encouraged. And I think if you're going to go with...
But what about if they do that? However... Since you are the owner of Caspa AI, then it is going back to a black person in a way. I know that's a weird way to look at it.
But that's true. But what I meant with that example is you could do that. If you're saying like you would rather invest directly to people that are certain kind of race or ethnicity or whatever, but you don't want to do it or you find it really difficult, but you're already spending all the time and effort doing it with the physical models, then I feel like you should be probably trying to put in some equal time to find those models. Yeah. But the problem is that because AI is changing this whole space, it's no longer going to be a question of I'm not trying to manually find these models, but I can do all of this online. And I think that's...
So you won't be paying anyone.
So you won't be paying anyone. But I also think people's jobs are going to be changing over time. So like those models maybe will be doing... They could be doing XYZ, maybe they could do something with AI or whatever, or there are things where you could start training your own model on yourself, like an AI model, and then maybe sell there's like different things that are going to come out as a result of like AI. But yeah, like I could see how it's like something that needs to be talked about. It's like a touchy
subject.
Yeah, and it should be addressed, but there's like different angles to it.
Yeah, I think for sure it's already happening. I think I was mentioning to you before, every time I go on YouTube and I see some of the advert banners, there are only sometimes black women. I'm like, is everyone seeing this? Because this is, for me, even though I guess it's hyper-personalized for me, which would make me relate to them more, I wonder if it is on my dad's home screen. Like, is this what he's seeing, like a sports bra with a black woman? You know?
Yeah, maybe back to your point, it's just better to encourage people to like go into tech so that they can actually just be investing in different people and solving these kind of
problems they want. Exactly. Also, you're more of, it's not good to hammer on certain bad things, just build a solution.
Yeah, either build a solution for it. It's good to always talk about stuff and be aware of it, but like whenever there's a problem, there's a solution for it. Yeah. And now you could use the tech to build a solution for it. Maybe we should encourage people to like go into one of fixing the solution as opposed to just talk about the problem and not doing anything about it. You know?
I agree. And now just wrapping up the podcast, what do you wish you'd known before starting a business?
That's a good question. There's probably a lot of things. I think more people are willing to help than you might know. And I always still lean back to trying to figure things out myself, but like people are willing to help. And also I think from like a female founder perspective, something that I hear a lot and I think is very common is women tend to undersell themselves a little bit. And I think something
for sure
so much instead of a mentor told me this when I was at Goldman. She was like, there was a study of you have a guy and you have a girl and they're both equally qualified and they see a job role. If the guy has 7 out of 10 of the requirements, then he'll apply. And if the girl has 7 out of 10, then she won't apply. And I think that just across the board like relates with whatever industry. So I think it's just don't be scared to be confident and yourself as you deserve, as
you
opposed
deserve.
to undersell.
Brilliant. And my final question is, do you have a word of advice for aspiring entrepreneurs?
Just do it.
Just do it.
Just do it.
I feel like this is how the podcast ends a lot.
Really?
The final, everyone's just do it.
Yeah. And you don't have to make it such a big thing. Like, you literally just start small. Like, it's better to and be like, I just want to build a website, and then build the website. And then, I just want to get like a customer on the website, talk to a few people. Like, it's just take it one step at a time.
Brilliant. Thank you, Elaf. You've been amazing.
Thank you.
Your journey's been so inspiring. And I can't wait for people to hear this episode.
Thank you.